So, as Karen said, this is the session where the rubber hits the road, where we are going to talk about hiring people with disabilities and how we help companies do that. So Howard and I will kick it off, and we'll talk a little bit about how we support companies through our hiring engagements. And then the majority of the session will really be Todd speaking about his experience in working with NOD, why it's important to Foot Locker. It did take us some time in developing the relationship with Foot Locker. We'll talk about that as well. But then really give you the opportunity in the audience to ask questions of Todd and of just the process if you'd like as well. So a hiring engagement for NOD includes many different components, but part of it really is using our disability employment tracker results as a roadmap for companies when we first engage. If that company has not had the opportunity to complete the disability employment tracker, then we do come in and we look at policies, process, et cetera, really looking through the disability lens at all of the various processes involved in the employment life cycle, looking specifically for strengths that we can build on, as well as where there are potential gaps that we really need to help to shore up when we're looking to identify talent with disabilities. We look at it from the supply and demand side. Howard and I like to say when we're out on the road together, which we are a lot, that I come from the demand side, so I came from the business side of this. Prior to being at NOD, I was with Manpower Group, and I oversaw their National Disability Employment program there. And Howard comes from the supply side, where he worked specifically with vocational rehabilitation and the Virginia Commonwealth University in developing individuals with disabilities to go to work, to make that transition. So, Howard, do you want to talk a little bit about the process that we go through with our companies?
Good afternoon. You know, I've been doing this work for over 47 years on the supply side, and over the last 9 years I've been with NOD, I've learned a lot. When I first came to NOD, I thought, well, this is great, and it gave me an opportunity to work with businesses, knowing that they were having a hard time finding people with disabilities. And I thought a lot of the problems were just with business. But I soon found out that a lot of the challenges rest with the supply side, more than the business side. I know there's still fears and uncertainty and myths about, as you heard today, about employing people, but the supply side has a lot of challenges as well. And so what we try to do is try to help the business with that. I want to read you a couple of quotes I've gotten from businesses when I started at NOD, when we started talking about hiring engagements. One was, I want to hire workers with disabilities and agreed to work with a local agency, but it took too long for them to find any applicants. I wish I had a real community partner who understood my needs and wanted to meet my objectives. I expect more people with disabilities could secure employment if more programs work together. And help. Where do I start? I need help navigating the system. And that's been the issue. And what we try to do is help businesses navigate that hard space out there of trying to work with the many different rehabilitation agencies and partners in the community when they want to have a hiring engagement. So the first thing we do is we try to understand the jobs from the business side. So for example, I'll use Foot Locker. We went in and toured Foot Locker. We looked at their jobs. Which is the ones they want to fill? How many they want to fill? And when you have a local hiring engagement, like we started in Junction City, Kansas with Foot Locker, it's, you start working with the local community. If you want to hire at a higher level, then it's a much different approach as far as who do you go find. But the first thing you want to do is identify who's out there, who are the players, who are the rehab partners. So we try to get a good list of all of the people in that community. And we usually start with the state vocational rehabilitation program and then go from there. Once we build that list, then we want to interview those. So we've developed what we call a partner questionnaire, and ask them questions like, how many other businesses do you work with? Do you have a database? Will you be willing to assign a project manager to the project? Do you do training to help business? So we got a bunch of questions, and I advise any business here, if you're thinking about that on your own, ask those questions, as you would any other vendor that you work with. Ask those hard questions. So once we get that interview back, and we do it either face-to-face, sometime by phone, but we then try to meet with those providers. And one of the biggest questions we ask, are you willing to work with other providers and partners in the community to bring talent to the business? And that's often the most difficult question, because everybody has their own landscape. They don't play well in the sandbox. They don't do work together. And so it's an issue of trying to find an organization who might have a few candidates, but will not have all the candidates, especially if the business wants to hire a number of people. They're going to eventually run out and they'll have to work with other people. So what we do is take that questionnaire and turn it into a scorecard to provide to the business, looking at things like mission, what services does that provider, that partner offer, what services to the business do they offer, how successful are they, how many placements did they make, what are the salaries, and we share that with the business and give them our recommendation and let the business interview those potential partners to make a decision who would be my best organization for us to have a lead partner. Not that others wouldn't join, but someone who would lead the show, because usually businesses don't want to work with 10 and 12 different people. They want to work with one organization to bring others to them. So once we have that and the decision made, we introduce that partner to the business. Sometimes we even have the partner come in and actually work some of the jobs, especially if it's going to require a job coach to do that. And then we set up training inside the business to train all of their staff. We have advocated and suggested that businesses, when they want to have a higher engagement, is train everybody in their business on disability awareness and etiquette. And once the training is set, it's done, we involve those partners in that training. Then the process is set when we start the hiring. And the last thing I think we do that really makes a difference is we set up bi-weekly calls with the business, the partner, and us at NOD to manage that for 6 months to 9 months to find out how we're doing. And to put out fires to make sure things are working well, make sure we are bringing talent. And then it's somewhat easier when you have a local hiring engagement, like one building or one site in one community. But again, as I said, if you're looking for a different level of talent at a higher level and you're recruiting from across the country or in more than one site, it becomes more difficult because then you have to look at a higher skill set of the population, where are they being housed, who's working with those folks. So the college is coming to play. We have actually introduced Foot Locker to a couple of national organizations to help bring talent to them, and I think Barbara's here from the United Spinal Association. She spoke early this morning. The Paralyzed Veterans of America, MS Society, and others that will help build a pipeline for Foot Locker to gain the type of skill set personnel they'll need. So that's kind of how we kind of operate from the supply side. So I'll turn it back to you for anything on supply, or back to Todd.
Great, thank you so much, Howard.
Yeah.
I think, Todd, if you want to talk about really how we started this journey together, why it's important to Foot Locker, really talk about Foot Locker as well, I think that would be fantastic.
Sure. Well,
Thank
hey,
you.
thanks for having me. Foot Locker is an $8 billion retailer. We have over 3,000 stores, 8 brands. Global company. We operate in about 27 countries, and I wish I could say that this initiative was designed, with a pure vision and foresight. But our problem statement was our Junction City, Kansas facility, which is a 1.3 million square foot facility. It's in a fairly rural community. It's our central nervous system of our U.S. distribution network, and we've done well as a company. We've grown nicely, and we fundamentally couldn't fulfill all the demand that was coming at the distribution center over the last couple of years, and really that was the create the need moment that got us together as a leadership team, and we had a number of grassroots brainstorming sessions on site to say, hey, how do we get to the other side of this? Engagement was low. We were working people way too many hours, and we weren't satisfying customers, and so that's really what got us to moving in the right direction and where we are today.
Thank you. And I think that when we went to, Howard and I, when we started and we visited the Junction City Kansas facility, we really did see that there was a strain, but they were so excited to have us there because they knew that this was moving forward, that it was the light, a light at the end of the tunnel. There was no way they wanted to hire 120 people this year. And Howard and I both said, well, we would absolutely love that. We don't think that's going to happen. We'd love to make that happen with you, but let's really look at where you have the most need and let's work together to develop a plan. So Howard, when we talked through that and we thought about really, the value proposition, when you first were talking with Todd, and maybe you're the better one to answer this, Todd, is really thinking about the value proposition, that it was about the fact that you needed people, right? That's it, right? Plain and simple. We have open positions. We need people. Looks like a really great source of talent for us. But what else did you consider when you thought about the value proposition for this? Because I want to clarify that it wasn't just Junction City. You had a vision about bringing it into the services center in Camp Hill as well. We're also looking at Wisconsin, Florida. So it was a larger vision for you.
Yeah, leveraging the power of our people is one of our 4 strategic imperatives. I think we're a good retailer and we're good for the communities that we operate in, and I've had experience in prior employers with similar programs. I had the opportunity to be exposed to Walgreens at some point in my career. So I saw the power of the program. And so, when we were brainstorming initiatives and how do we solve the problem statement, this was one that rose to the top very quickly.
Excellent.
So Todd, what kind of things can you tell us about things you've learned from the journey, or some of the things that people in Camp Hill and Junction City have learned from the time we started last December?
Yeah, I think one, we knew it would be a staffing lever, that we hadn't necessarily overturned every rock from a staffing lever. I think we knew that we would get some goodwill from the community. I think, and those things have definitely happened. I think the big learnings that I don't think we fully recognized going until we got into it was one, just the engagement and passion from the associate base. We had been losing engagement because we were working so many hours and overtime and weekends during the holidays. And, we had 25 associates that wanted to be part of the steering committee. We had, when we went through awareness training and sensitivity training, we had over 125 associates that wanted to be buddies. So just tremendous support and engagement across the workforce, and I've got all kinds of examples of where we've seen improvements, and it's really brought the center back together as a family. Mm-hmm. I think the other area that was a big learning was it just made us a lot better. On the operation, and it was everything from interviewing processes to our job descriptions to our fit for duty tests to how we onboard to ultimately how we schedule associates, and all of those things were very fixable, but we had gotten accustomed to doing things a certain way, and I think this program, one, it required us to take a step back and think about continuous improvement and a different way to enhance and improve those processes.
So I want to talk about the fit test just for a minute, that fit for duty test, because it was a challenge. And when we first had the conversations with the Junction City staff, we said that's going to be a challenge. We knew it was. And so we all started to work together. And then it went to headquarters, and everyone really started to look at this and think, maybe we should be doing something differently. Can you talk about that process? Because it wasn't something that we could change at the local level. We really did need to have buy-in. So if you could just talk about that a little bit, because it was a big win for us. Because once we were able to change that, that's when really things opened up.
Yeah, I think like a lot of employers, we had really good intentions, with our fit for duty test. And I've led operations organizations and safety for a big part of my career and have been very successful on that front, and fit for duty is definitely a piece of that recipe. And so it was done with the right intent. We started it up 7 or 8 years ago, and it had the desired results when our risk management team and our ops team looked at what our safety and recordable record has done over the years. It wasn't until we started putting some disability candidates through the process that we learned that the lift test was a 60-pound lift. And, I don't know about you, but I know none of my pairs of shoes weigh anywhere close to 60 pounds. And, typically most facilities, a team lift is anything, over 30 to 40 pounds. So, and the third party that was administering the test had just gotten more restrictive over the years. And it was just a big aha that, we knew that people were falling out of the process, but we didn't until we actually went through this program. It was just a big learning, and once I and the team were aware of it, we made course corrections.
The one thing I remember is that when we were first at Foot Locker is we were trying to identify a champion. And having a champion inside the building was important. And you have a great champion in, of course, Dan and also Patina. There's a woman who's an operations manager who said, "I'll be the champion." And she stood up. So she kind of gets everybody excited in the building about what's going on. So I'm sure that's been a lot to Dan and other people in that building.
Yeah, it clearly needs to be grassroots. As much great experiences as I've had with programs in the past, having that local champion in the facility and it be a bottoms up effort has I think really made it stick and it'll be sustainable with that approach. Yeah.
But I don't want to glass over the leadership, because if it hadn't been for Todd, it wouldn't have been an engagement. We were talking to the Foot Locker, but until he came on and saw the vision, we wouldn't have had that engagement. It hadn't been your leadership. So.
And we also wouldn't have the services center. So I think that's another important point, that really seeing this from both sides, that there was a need in their services center as well for professional talent, but that the services center did not see people with disabilities as a viable source, even though they had been hiring people with disabilities over the course of several years. They had a director with a significant disability. They weren't intentional in their focus on really looking at this for sourcing. And when we went to that facility and we asked them, so what's the greatest motivator for you right now? And they said, Todd's paying for it. Really, but
whatever it takes.
But think about that, right? It's about the dollars and cents sometimes, right? Is that I didn't have the budget to do it. I'm interested, and they are on board, right? We've been there. We've talked to we've done the interviews. We've talked to and done their management training, et cetera. They are all fully on board, but they didn't have the money to do it. So sometimes it just comes down to the dollars and cents. So, Todd, thank you.
Well, it doesn't take long to pay back if you're not working overtime, if you don't have vacancies, if you're not turning over, and it's a pretty simple call at the end of the day.
So, where are you now? What do you think of for goals for the future? I know we've had several discussions about moving things forward, but how do you feel about what's happening now and where we're going?
Yeah. So we're still early on in the journey. We started this early this year, and I'm pleased to say in our Junction City facility we have 13 associates on board. We obviously see a lot of growth potential to increase the density in the building. We've had great results out of that pool. Most of them are doing selection activities. For the most part, most of the pool have learning disabilities, cognitive disabilities. We have one hearing disability, but it's been a great start to the program, and we've had great performance out of those associates. The workforce has really come together to take them in, and it's been a really good start. But it's we definitely have much bigger aspirations over time for sure. Clearly. We've just started in our Camp Hill facility. That facility has about 650 exempt associates, everything from accounting to logistics and supply chain to finance, as well as we're looking to remodel that distribution center in a big way over the next 12 months. So, as we build out our supply chain footprint, this lever is going to be a big part of our toolkit.
Great.
One of the things that at Foot Locker that people have not been happy with is that a lot of people with disabilities who are coming to work there can't work more than part-time. Mainly because of their benefits, and they want to work, but they can't. And so I think Foot Locker is beginning to do a lot of different things to try to enhance that, good benefits, and also working on a transportation issue. I give the Foot Locker staff credit. They've been talking to the local people to try to get a transportation bus to get more people there at that Junction City site when they didn't have it before. So Todd, how about anything that has resonated with the staff more than others, or what kind of, you see, I think you talked about the culture, but what's kind of resonated with the staff in both Junction City and as we start in Camp Hill?
I think the first, probably the biggest thing is it wasn't that hard. I think when you're in a crisis and you're not hitting service levels and you're not hitting cost and, your employees aren't satisfied, I think that was probably the biggest thing, is that with the right resources and support, it doesn't take that long, one. And, I think the second was just the team was open to looking at how they do things. And, I think having an outside-in approach to how you do things and have that continuous improvement mindset, whether it was the fit for duty test or having flexibility in how we schedule, it's driven a lot of employer of choice benefits for us that, will help us globally on a lot of fronts.
Great, and I know we do have those calls. We have biweekly calls with both Camp Hill and Junction City. And on our most recent call, and you may not be aware of this, but they have made hires at Camp Hill. They did hire a staff accountant, and they do have someone that they're hiring in their call center as well. And they're really in the infancy stages. So that's very encouraging that we are seeing that they are seeing the candidates that we have really spoken with, and with Howard doing the piece of it with the supply side and looking with the sourcing partners to identify those candidates, because that is a challenge sometimes. And in your market, it can be a little bit where you are. So we'd like to open this up to questions. How do you feel about that now? Ready? Okay.
Great.
So we have some questions. I see someone in the back there. Perfect.
Hi there, Will Williamson from Prudential. So with your findings with the fitness test, did any of that translate into writing more inclusive job postings? So you had job postings that were out there before, you have to lift 60 pounds. You found that 60 pounds was not something that was necessarily needed. How did that translate for your talent acquisition specialist?
Yeah, it actually wasn't part of the job description, because I think had it been part of the job description, we would have caught it a lot earlier. But we did modify job descriptions. That was probably one of the more time-consuming elements in the journey. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about, weeks of effort, not a significant effort. And, I think we obviously made some other enhancements in terms of really defining different positions in the facility. I mean, we had gone back and forth over the years between having, hundreds of classifications to a general warehouse worker. And so I think this process helped us get maybe to a happy medium.
And what caused that was that people were beginning to make candidate referrals, and they couldn't get through the fit test. And that frustrated the supply side. And so they were slowing down. So then Foot Locker saying, let's take a look at this, because it hadn't been looked at in a while. So that definitely helped. And then they were willing to put those people back through, and a lot of them got hired.
And they have done the work on that. They have actually separated out their essential functions on their job descriptions now. So it is listed as essential functions in order to perform the job. So they've done a lot of work there as well.
Hi, I'm an employment specialist for a state rehab agency, and my job is going to be moving into developing partnerships between our agency that provides employment services to people in the state rehab program, and then partnering with employers to try and develop a relationship like Todd has. And I guess my question is for Todd. If I were to knock on your door and try and develop a partnership and explain what I'm doing, what are some of the things you would want to hear from me in that first elevator speech or introduction?
Well, great question. I think for me and for our team, how lightweight and agile an implementation can be. I think that was the myth buster for our team to really get moving. So I think, the way you demonstrate proof points that, this isn't a mountain and you don't need tens of dedicated resources in an organization to support it. I think the more you can define that and make it easier is probably the biggest thing. Obviously, I think, use cases and referrals and those types of things help. I mean, in this case, I had some history in the space and some experience, so I didn't need to, I didn't necessarily need to be convinced of the program benefits, but I think probably those two things would be what I would point to. And I mean, you all have seen a number of clients. I'd be interested, Felicia and Howard, in your thoughts on that one as well.
Well, I think, as I said earlier, one of the things that frustrates the business the most is that when they want to hire and they want candidates, they can't find them. And they don't have a partner willing to help them find those candidates. So if you're willing to go beyond, say, your caseload, your organization, to build in other providers or other partners to supply that talent when you run out, that's going to make them happy, because that's the frustrating part for business.
Because that's part of the out with the old, in with the new. When we look at models maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it really was on the supply side. So we would have our service providers would approach a business and say, I have this candidate. Can you help them? Can you employ them? Right? And now we really are looking for partners that are coming to us as a business and asking us, what do you need? How can I help you? What positions do you have open now? What does the candidate profile look like? Really digging deep on the demand-driven side is what's most important, because you only, and I want to just stand up, you only have one shot. So lead with your A player every single time, and it needs to meet the demand of the employer.
This wasn't Foot Locker, but one of our other engagements was after the company had tried to do it on their own and practically had given up. And what he said was that, I thought the hardest part of this would be, can people with disabilities really work, and can they do jobs? What I found out was the hardest part was finding a good partner to help me with that. And that was the hardest part. So.
We have another question? Oh. Oh, hold on.
Oh, right here.
Oh, Maria, we'll get to you. I see you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Webb with EY. So you're now employing individuals with different abilities. How are you training your other employees who might have never interacted with somebody who needed an accommodation, or who only worked part-time because of the benefits?
It's a great question, and I think that was one of the things we benefited from not doing it ourselves, and we put the entire workforce through awareness and etiquette training as part of the pre-implementation, and we learned that we haven't done enough training, with the workforce in general. But the satisfaction rates coming out of that session were, I've never seen such good satisfaction rates on any training or session. And we use that as an opportunity to get volunteers for buddies, for new associates. But well, you two conducted the training, so I probably worth sharing what the general sentiment. But I think that was one of the big opportunities. I mean, there are lunch and learns after that we continue to have to promote awareness and etiquette. But that was the big change, I think, for us.
It really was to see the employees that really, employees that self-identified during that process, right? We spend, 2 or 3 hours with them, and the number of employees that will raise their hand and say, I am a person with a disability, I have a disability, or I know sign language. I think we identified 15 people in Camp Hill through our trainings that knew sign language because they had family members that did. Foot Locker also took it a step farther, though, and they did the management training as well. So it wasn't just awareness and interacting with people with disabilities. They also trained their managers. So we went back and we trained all of their management staff on interviews, accommodations, and performance discussions. So they really do feel equipped. It is about empowering our people so that they feel comfortable given any situation now, and they understand how to enter into the interactive process, which is accommodations, really, and be able to support staff. So Foot Locker went that extra step as well.
Go ahead, Todd.
Well, I was going to say that management training, again, is just something we've seen fringe benefits. I mean, in terms of how managers deal with teams and associates. And, often in a distribution center, supervisors and team managers get promoted because they're great individual contributors on the floor. And, we found that we weren't really giving them the tools to be successful as a leader of people. And this training, I think, checked a couple different boxes on building our leadership team.
And I would say, from a business standpoint, that's a real commitment, especially when you're training that many people, because in Junction City, we trained over 500 over like a 4-day period, 3 or 4 sessions a day. And in Camp Hill, the same way. So we trained almost 1,000 of those employees over in a couple of weeks. So it's a big commitment from the time they take off the floor to do that. So.
Mm-hmm. Can we go to Maria right here, I think, and then we'll go to the next. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Maria Caudill, and new to the organization, I'm with Sutter Health. And one of the questions and challenges, or I should say opportunities, that we face right now is really finding, when you talk about partners, trying to find partners in the community to get a level of employee that is really more on the professional side. Mm-hmm. How do we bring in those young college graduates or the individuals from the community colleges, the 2-year degrees that we can bring in and groom? I think that's a challenge that we're facing because there, as you mentioned, there is no one spot. Right. It's a very wide field.
Yeah, and once they leave college or the community college, they're gone, and you have nobody to track them.
They're gone, or they're thinking, gee, I don't know if I can do that. So.
Yeah, so it is a way you need to find a good partner there, going to the community college and talking to the career or the disability office to try to get them to partner with you for those candidates, or having another organization who is willing to do that for you. So that's what's important, to try to find that partner. And what we do is try to help you find that, so try to identify who they might be, as well as connect you to someone like at that level organizations who might have people who are willing to move in, come in, like from the United Spinal Association, or some of the national programs who have chapters in different in different states and different localities. So yeah, it's harder to do it with that population, but it can be done. But that's something we've been working on for a couple of years with the Campus to Careers, trying to figure it out, because the college issue is a big issue.
And it's really important too, when you are looking at that college level talent, when you're dealing with your campus recruitment, that your campus recruitment not only is doing the outreach to the career services, but also the disability services offices. Because disability services offices are only tasked with providing accommodations to the students, and they need to know that they should be working with those career services offices to connect the dots and build that bridge for those students to make the transition. And
Today
it needs to be driven by the employer.
Yeah.
Disability Institute. So you've talked a lot about bringing people in the door, and I'm wondering about how you keep them in the door and whether there's a role for employee assistance programs. And I'm really struck that we haven't talked about like work incentives and benefits planning advice to sort of help people sort of make that jump from part-time to full-time. So it's both the benefits piece and other employee assistance programs that can help keep people in the door.
I can tell you that some of the ones in Junction City that we were working with who were part-time and were trying to look at part-time, they did do like a benefits analysis of whether they wanted to, earn more money if they stopped getting Social Security versus not. So they all went through some type of planning. I'm not sure if they all had if they went through the other Social Security benefits through the rehab program or not, whether they looked at. But they did get the rehab agency to do the benefit analysis.
It's a great question, though. Thank you for the question. And I do think that that's something that we do need to take a closer look at when we're looking at our partners and making sure that any candidate that's coming through the pipeline is receiving that counseling and they do understand the work incentives and how they can really take full advantage of work versus really being concerned about losing their benefits. So thank you.
Which also help with transportation issues.
Exactly.
Better. My name is Jerry Marcus, Comcast, NBC Universal. My question is kind of veering to the left a bit with regards to working with your talent acquisition team, with regards to working with your HR. What was that experience like? How did you train them? How did you get them? And how was that partnership like?
Yeah, I mean, I think our HR team, welcomed the help. I think that was that was a big, originally, I think again it was, hey, this is going to be a mountain of work for our organization, and it was one of those trust us on this one, but. It ended up, being I think a big productivity lever for our HR team. So that made it a lot easier. But you do need partnership on job descriptions, on the benefits case, the onboarding. It is I think. Our hiring process was lacking some structure there, and we did identify opportunities and needs to supplement our HR staff so that we had the right support going through those processes.
All right. I think do we have time for one more, Taryn?
Yeah, so
Okay,
I've got a
Oh.
question. I'm Alex Mango, National Grid. So
Hi.
Felicia, you said something. It's my first time here at this conference, and I've learned an incredible amount already. And I'm an information overload right now. So one of the things that you commented on is the frustration employers have. Now at National Grid, we have some partners with Aspire at Wentworth Institute of Technology, which the comment that was made across the room, these are individuals. They have a program that focuses on students with autism and gets them internships and into employment. That's just one example, which is tremendous. We have another relationship in Syracuse, New York, with an organization called Monarchs. We have a bunch of folks that we've employed for over 8 years. But my question is this: the access or the frustration that and I face it, we face this frustration with access to talent, talented individuals with disabilities. How do we bridge that gap? Because if I heard earlier this morning that 80% of individuals with disabilities are unemployed, what's missing? And that's just a general question, but I'm struggling to figure out how do we attract the talent?
You know, it's a good question. I'm familiar with Aspire. That's the program that you're doing in Massachusetts for National Grid. Yep, Mass General Hospital. Great program. I know you're doing great work there at National Grid, and I think that it does. It continues to be the greatest frustration for employers, and that's why when we talk about the sourcing piece of this, it really is about understanding first and foremost, all recruitment is local, and understanding those local resources that you have. But then it has to be something that then is scalable, right? You can use those best practices to then continue, like what we're doing with Foot Locker, using what we're learning in one facility and then bringing that to the next facility. Ideally, we're walking away, right? NOD is walking away at the end of the day, once you're prepared. However, you have to continue to look for partners. It is all about, you're not just using, and I use this as an example. Because I came from staffing. So you're not just using one staffing partner for your staffing needs. You're using all of your major staffing partners, and you have several that you're using. It's the same with community partners in your local markets, is that you really, and why we talk about the importance of letting everyone know, you know what, we really want to work with you, but ideally we need all of you to work together to support us. And that's what's going to be most successful for us on the business side. You drive it. You are the business. You are the one that has the need. They have the supply. You drive it. You tell them exactly what you want and how you want the relationship to work. And if they're not going to work with you, walk away, because there's another provider in the local landscape that you can work with.
One thing we try to do is try to have a role and responsibilities when we do these engagements. What is the role of the business? What's the role of us? What's the role of the partner? And what are they going to do? And try to, it's not a legal agreement. It's just a role and responsibility. Everybody agrees this is what it's going to do. And one of that is going out and trying to work with other partners to bring in the talent. And that's one of the critical pieces. We had a question up here.
Yeah, I was just going to comment about, we keep talking about accommodations, and we haven't really talked a whole lot about accessibility. And accommodations are great, but the OFCCP is going to be doing Section 503 focused reviews, and we tell all of our members, a lot of which are in this room, that you better check that accommodation information on your website, because a study has been done, and it's a huge percentage that either the person whose email address is on there or phone number is on there doesn't even know what an accommodation is. They don't know that their name was even on there. They don't know what they're supposed to do. And we tell everybody, the OFCCP is going to call and ask for an accommodation, and they're also going to apply for a job. And what we don't think about is that if you have an accessible website, the person that needs that accessibility is going to go through the application process in the exact same manner as a person without a disability. If they do get a response from the phone number or email address that they request an accommodation from, it's going to be at least 24 hours, at least. And if they use a data management technique to, look at the first 25 candidates or the first 50 candidates, the person with a disability that needed that accommodation is going to be the 100th person that applied. So you've just lost out on every person that you might want to be looking at and want to hire. So if I can say anything here today, work on accessibility of your websites. And it's incredibly important, because if you want to attract people, we talked earlier about culture, if you want to attract people and let them know that you are open to, or anxious to hire people with disabilities, an accessible website right off the bat will tell them that.
Yeah, and going a little beyond the accessible website is with the supply side, often it takes them a little longer to generate the applicants. So by the time they generate it, the job might be gone. So if you have a partnership and you have those partners, you can let them know that the job's going to be opening up in the next month or the next 2 weeks to give them some lead time to start identifying candidates that they can push to you, because often once they get it, it takes them a while to get those together. So, but the accessible websites definitely. And I will give Foot Locker another kudo here. In Junction City, they wanted to look at that building and see if it's accessible. So they've had actually someone come in through us to do an accessibility survey, a universal design type of study. And I know a couple of businesses here have done that with the universal design. So that's another key paint, so they can bring in other kinds of people, other disability groups in there.
Buildings in 1977 weren't designed.
We got handicap accessible doors because I had a wheelchair. It's like, if I can't get in there, none of our applicants could either.
Yeah. Excellent.
Well, I think we're out of time, but I do want to thank everyone. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Made our session fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Todd.